Prince William has just shaken up the royal world with one of the most candid and revealing interviews ever given by a senior member of the monarchy. In a time when every word from the palace is weighed, analyzed, and often hidden behind carefully worded press releases, William has stepped into the spotlight with a voice that sounds refreshingly human, unapologetically open, and surprisingly forward-looking. What he said in this interview is being hailed by some as the first steps toward a more open monarchy, while others are calling it reckless, even dangerous. But no matter how you view it, one thing is certain. The Prince of Wales has set the stage for a dramatic new chapter in the royal family's story. This interview wasn't just another routine sit-down. It wasn't the usual vague platitudes about duty and service. William sat down for an episode of The Reluctant Traveler with Eugene Levy, aired in early October 2025, and let down the walls in a way that royals rarely do. He invited the cameras into Windsor, shared glimpses of everyday life, and most strikingly, spoke about change, real change for the monarchy. In his own words, he wants to ensure the royal family is having the most impact it can possibly be, and he isn't afraid to question the way things have always been done. Now let's pause on that for a moment. For centuries, the strength of the monarchy has been built on continuity, the idea that nothing changes, that tradition endures no matter what. But here we have the future King of England essentially saying, we need to rethink this. We need to modernize. That is a seismic statement, not because of its wording, but because of who said it. This wasn't a historian or a commentator, it was the heir himself. One of the most talked about elements of the interview was William's focus on family life. He made it clear that his top priority is protecting his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, from the same relentless spotlight that defined his own childhood. He spoke about how his children don't yet have mobile phones, not because of strictness for the sake of it, but because he wants them to have something resembling a normal childhood, free from the digital glare that consumes so many young people today. For viewers, this struck a deeply emotional chord. People saw not just a prince, but a father who remembers the pain of being hounded by the press as a boy and is determined to shield his family from repeating history. But of course, royal honesty always comes with consequences. Within days of the interview airing, tabloids and insiders pounced. Headlines screamed about a rift between William and King Charles. Reports claimed the two men had fallen silent, that they weren't speaking, and that Charles was deeply unhappy with his son's openness. Some suggested the king saw William's talk of change as a veiled criticism of his reign, especially since Charles has spent years carefully crafting his own image as a modernizer in his own right. Others dismissed these rift rumors as classic royal drama, whispers blown out of proportion to feed the royal gossip machine. Still, the damage was done. The public was left wondering whether William's honesty had driven a wedge right through the heart of the monarchy. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. On one hand, you have William being praised by the public for his refreshing candor. Social media lit up with comments like, "Finally, a royal who feels real," and "This is exactly the kind of monarch Britain needs." Younger audiences in particular seem to resonate with William's tone. Less stiff, more authentic, a man willing to question outdated practices. For them, this was a breath of fresh air. On the other hand, royal traditionalists sounded the alarm. To them, William's words risk undermining the monarchy's stability. They asked, quote, "If the heir to the throne starts questioning the institution in public, what does that signal to the world?" Close quote. And this is the central tension of the moment. Is William being bold and visionary, or is he being reckless? Is this the start of a carefully planned modernization strategy, or is it an emotional outburst that could damage the monarchy's carefully crafted image? The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in between. We must also understand the generational divide here. William belongs to a generation that grew up in the media storm, the chaos of his parents' very public marriage breakdown, the tragedy of Diana's death, the ceaseless tabloid coverage of every move he and Harry ever made. He knows what that world feels like. And unlike past heirs, he's not hiding from it. He's confronting it head-on, trying to carve out a different path for himself and his children. When he talks about change, it isn't abstract. It's rooted in his lived experience. That makes it both relatable and deeply personal. But how is this playing out inside the palace? Officially, silence. No grand statement, no public clash. The palace has stuck to its usual strategy of saying nothing while letting the media frenzy run its course. But behind the scenes, insiders suggest this interview may have caught Charles off guard. Remember, Charles himself waited decades to reach the throne, and he's long had a reputation for wanting a more streamlined, efficient monarchy. Yet hearing his own son publicly suggest that more change is needed could feel like a challenge. It's not hard to imagine the tension. And yet there's another way to look at this. Some royal commentators argue that William's words weren't aimed at his father at all, but at the future, that he wasn't criticizing Charles, but rather preparing the ground for his own eventual reign. Think of it as a subtle soft launch, planting the seeds now, so when his time comes, the public won't be shocked by reform. If that's the case, then this wasn't reckless, it was strategic. So where does this leave us? The monarchy today is at a crossroads. On one side, the weight of tradition, centuries of continuity, rituals, and the belief that the crown should remain above the noise of modern politics and debate. On the other side, the pressures of a rapidly changing world. Social media, shifting public values, calls for transparency, and a younger generation less enchanted by pomp and pageantry. William, with this one interview, has positioned himself right in the middle of that crossroads. He is signaling that the monarchy must adapt if it hopes to survive another century. And let's not forget, this is all happening while the royal family is still navigating ongoing challenges. King Charles's health concerns, lingering questions about Harry and Meghan's place in the family, and public skepticism about the monarchy's cost in an era of economic strain. Against that backdrop, William's openness doesn't just feel like personal honesty, it feels like a deliberate attempt to keep the monarchy relevant in a world that is questioning it more loudly than ever. What comes next? Watch closely. Will King Charles respond publicly, perhaps with his own carefully worded speech about continuity and stability? Will William double down on his message, perhaps shaping his patronages and public work around reform-minded causes? Or will palace officials quietly try to roll back the significance of his words, hoping the storm blows over? Whatever the case, one thing is undeniable. The interview has shifted the conversation. For years, William has been seen as dutiful but somewhat reserved, cautious compared to the fiery legacy of his mother. Now, suddenly, he is being cast as a reformer, even a disruptor. That shift in narrative alone is remarkable. The question is whether he can maintain that momentum or whether the weight of palace tradition will slowly pull him back into silence. As we move forward, the spotlight on William will only intensify. Every speech, every appearance, every family moment will now be examined through the lens of this interview. Is he signaling change again? Is he pushing against the old system? Or was this just a one-time slip into candor? Time will tell, but the public is watching more closely than ever. Prince William's candidness has opened a door that cannot be easily closed. It has sparked debates inside Britain and far beyond about what the monarchy should mean in the 21st century. And whether you see him as a bold reformer or a risky rule breaker, the fact is this: for the first time in a long time, the monarchy feels alive with possibility and with tension. The next moves will define not just William's legacy, but the future of the crown itself. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more celebrity updates just like this.